Alright, solving equations with decimals in the new video format. Alright, so we are doing chapter 3. This is lessons 5 and 6. So this may be a little bit longer lesson than normal. Alright, so all of the same rules apply because we're solving equations. We're isolating the variable, so at the end you want x equals some number. We're going to be using inverse operations to do that. So if you have x plus 5, we're subtracting 5 from both sides. Okay, same kind of rules. And we're always, of course, checking our answer. However, this time, we're using our estimation techniques to check our answer. And actually, we're going to be checking our answer before we do the problem. I'll show you what I'm talking about soon. So keep in mind, before we do any problems, that it's just solving equations. The only difference is instead of regular integers, we have numbers with decimal places. That's it. All right, so let's do example 1. We've got n minus 17.9 equals negative 31.05. Now, first things first, you may notice over here on the right in this beautiful Carolina blue, I've written up my estimate. I said, okay, well, 17.9, that's like 18, so n minus 18. And 31.05, that's like negative 31. So I added 18 to both sides, and negative 31 plus 18 gave me a negative 13. So I know, based on my estimate, that my answer should be around negative 13 when I solve this out. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to add my 17.9 to both sides. Notice how I'm lining up the decimal places here because I am adding decimals. 17.9. And I'll use a 0 as my placeholder. Like always, these cancel out. And now we are going to be, should have written adding. Now we're going to be doing a little bit of decimal operations with negatives and stuff. So we have a negative and a positive. If you remember back to your negative rules, okay, remember back that what we do here is we find the absolute value of both numbers, and then we find the difference between them. So we've got the absolute value of 31.05, which is 31.05. And then the absolute value of 17.9 is just 17.9. So let's find the difference between those two. 31.05 minus, that's difference, 17.90. And let's do some subtraction. We got 5 minus 0, which is 5. We have to do some borrowing here. That becomes a 10. And that becomes a 2. Whoops. All right, so 10 minus 9 is 1, and 10 minus 7 is 3, and 2 minus 1 is 1. So 13.5. Now keep in mind, we're not done yet. Remember, the last step when you're adding numbers that are negative and positive here is that we have to determine whether or not that is a negative 13.15 or a positive. And remember, you always take the sign of the number that had the bigger absolute value. That number was 31.05, negative 31.05. So our answer is n equals negative 13.15. And that sure is close to my estimate of negative 13. So let's move on to the next problem. H plus negative 8.5 equals negative 0.6. As you can see in this beautiful Carolina blue, I've got my estimate ready. H plus, I said negative 9 equals negative 1. Those numbers are fairly close. I'm going to subtract negative 9 from both sides, which is, remember, the same thing as adding. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So I have negative 1 plus 9, which is 8. So my answer should be around 8. Now let's actually solve the problem. We have minus a negative 8.5 on both sides, which, like I just said, that's the same as saying adding 8.5. Lined up my decimals. Very nice. Now we have a negative and a positive. Just like last time, we want to take the absolute value of both numbers, find the difference between them, and determine whether it's positive or negative. So I'll go ahead and write the cancel out part here, end up with h equals. So let's go ahead and do the absolute value part. Absolute value of 8.5 is 8.5. Absolute value of negative 0.6 is 0.6. And we're going to find the difference between them. All right, now I can go ahead and do the borrowing here, but it's kind of easy if you think of it like money. $8.50 minus 60 cents. Okay, $7.90. But let's go ahead and do the borrowing anyway. 15 and 7. 15 minus 6, that's 9. And 7 minus 0 is 7. Now, is that a positive 7.9 or a 0? Or I'm sorry, a negative 7.9. Okay, that is going to be positive because the absolute value of 8.5 is larger than the absolute value of negative 0.6. So h is 7.9, which is really close to our estimate of 8. Let's keep going. Now we have y minus 33.4 equals 81.9. My estimate, I added 33 on both sides. Notice how I used rounded numbers here. And I got 82 plus 33 is 115 for my estimate. So let's do the actual thing. Plus 33.4 on both sides. 33.4. This crosses out. I now have y equals, now 81.9 plus 33.4. Thankfully, both of these are positive, so that's easy to do. 9 plus 4 is 13. 1, 1, that's 2. With a 3, that's a 5. 8, 3, 11. So 115.3, which is really close to 115. All right, now let's take a look at the rest of that page. Remember, in class today, I asked you to do page 49 and 51, but just to estimate them. Just estimate them, that's all. So take a look at your estimates and see if they're close to the actual answers. Okay, here are the actual answers from page 49. Okay, are your estimates close? Did you follow the negative rules? Okay, did you do the right operation to both sides? Check those things. Okay, these are the actual answers from the rest of the problems on that page. Okay, remember, you were assigned to estimate. Let's move on to solving with multiplication and division now. Okay, so we've got 4x equals negative 2.44, and I've written on my side of the page here my estimate. We have 4x equals negative 2. So I rounded there. 4x doesn't need to be rounded here, but negative 2 is close to negative 2.44, so that works. I divided both sides by 4. Negative 2 over 4 is the same as negative 1/2. So my answer should be close to negative 1/2. Let's do the real thing. Divide both sides by 4. We have negative 2.44 divided by 4. Now we're going to do a little bit of long division here. It's not as bad as it looks though. Now the number that's on top, or the way I write it, the number that's in front of the line when we're dividing, always goes inside of the division box. Okay, I kind of think of the division box as like the fun house. And the number that's in front of the line gets to go in the fun house. Or the number that's on top of the hill, he gets to go in the fun house. The other number has to wait outside. I also remember that is the dividend. This kind of sounds like wind. And it gets to go inside of there. And the divisor, kind of like loser, has to wait outside. It's corny, but it works. Anyways, so we put the decimal place right above when we're dividing. 4 does not go into negative 2, so that's a 0. But 4 does go into 24, 6 times, with 0 remaining. Okay. Now bring down your 4. 4 goes into 4 one time. Now remember, we did a negative divided by a positive, so that is a negative answer. So this 0.61 should be x equals negative 0.61, which is really close to negative 1/2. All right, now for example 5, 1.8x equals 5.76. I did my estimate over here. You could see that I estimate 3. Let's see if I'm close. Dividing both sides by 1.8. Those cancel out. Now we have a 5.76 in the I can't talk today, inside the division box, and a 1.8 on the outside. Now, I don't like dividing by decimals, and neither should you. So there's a trick here. If we have a decimal for the divisor, we move the decimal place one place over to make it a regular whole number. But that means we also have to move it one place over here as well. So our new problem says 18 and then 57.6. That's a lot better to work with than trying to figure out how many times 1.8 goes into 5.7. That's not fun. All right, so 18 goes into 57 3 times, and that's 54. 3 remaining, and bring down that 6. 18 goes into 36 twice. So very nice. And don't forget, decimal goes right above. So our answer is x equals 3.2, which is really close to my estimate. All right, just a few more. I told you this would be a longer lesson. All right, h divided by negative 1.05 equals negative 0.36. My estimate that I got was a positive 0.4, because remember, I'm multiplying both sides by a negative 1. So a negative times a negative makes a positive. So let's go ahead and see what I get. Multiply both sides by a negative 1.05 this time. So times negative 1.05. Now, notice I'm not lining up the decimals here. I'm actually lining up the last number. When I'm multiplying, I want to line up the last number, not the decimal places. This one just so happens to line up. But when you're multiplying, you do not have to line up those places. So we're multiplying here. Now, this is a long problem for multiplication, so let's go ahead and get to it. 6 times 5 is 30. 5 times 3 is 15, plus the 3 makes an 8. And there's our 1. 5 times 0, of course, is 0, and bring down that 1 to make a 180. 0 is our placeholder. Now, oh, this is easy. 0 times 6, 0. 0 times 3, 0. 0 times 0, 0. Oh, that was a lot of fun. Now, 2 zeros for our placeholders. Now we got 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 3 is 3, of course, and 1 times 0 is, well, 0. No fun there. Now let's add them all down. 0, 8, 7, 3, and 0. Now remember, with multiplying decimals, you count up the number of decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So our answer should have 1, 2, 3, 4. So h is equal to, now wait, before I finish, I did a negative times a negative. That means it's positive. Okay, good. So h is equal to positive 0.3780, which is really close to 0.4. All right, now final example. 4.25 equals 0.85. So my estimate is 0.25, or 1/4. I divided both sides by 4. All right, now let's take a look at the real deal. So I'm dividing both sides by 4.25. Once again, 0.85 will go inside of the division box. 4.25 on the outside. The top of the hill goes inside. Then once again, I want to move my decimal places. 1, 2, 1, 2. So now I'm doing 425 on the outside and 85 on the inside. Now 425 does not go into 85, but 425 does go into 850 twice, with nothing remaining. How convenient. So y equals, wait a second, I did a positive divided by a positive, so a positive answer. Okay, y equals 0.2 as my answer, which is really close to 0.25. All right, now here are the rest of the answers from that workbook, page 51. Okay, those are the actual answers. Remember to check your estimates. Did you do the right thing to both sides? Did you follow your negative rules? Your answer should be fairly close to what I have here. All right, I'm Mr. Bajork, and this was Solving Equations with Decimals.